Hi, Marissa. Good morning.
Hey Val, good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am amazing. Thank you so much. Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because when I read um, sort of your story, I connected on sort of a personal level because I feel like we kind of have similar stories in terms of how we were guided into the floral biz, both of our mothers. But why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the Wild Floral Fleur Co.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me this morning. My name is Marissa, and I'm the owner and founder of the Wild Floor Company. So it's based in the Bay Area, Concord, California. And yeah, I started my business in 2020, and we offer personal flowers for events, intimate events, weddings, birthday parties, you name it.
You do it all, right?
Yes, yes. We do.
Tell me a little bit about your upbringing in Northern California, because your parents are originally from Mexico, right?
So my mother was born here, but my grandparents and my aunt
Okay.
were born in Mexico in a small ranchito that's called La Cueva Grande in Zacatecas, Mexico. So my grandma came to this country in the 40s, brought her whole family. Her husband was actually here in Colorado. And so
Oh,
she crossed the border, brought her whole family with her. My mom was born here and they grew up in Oakland. So that's where my family was based out of. It wasn't until I think, believe the 80s, then they moved to Concord. So I grew up with my mom, my aunt, my grandma in a small 3-bedroom house. I had my cousin
wow.
living there, my aunt or her husband living there, and my other cousins. So it was a big old family in a
Yeah.
3-bedroom house, but you know what, we made do. So it was really quite the experience, quite the, not the traditional upbringing, I would say, but a lot of lessons learned, a lot of stuff that I'd, seen and experienced. So, which has, brought me here to today.
Tell me about your relationship with your grandmother and how that
Yes,
kind of like led you to floral design.
yeah, so definitely. So it was mostly like my aunt and my mom that led me to floral design, but I
Okay.
believe but it was more of my grandmother. So her and I shared a bedroom up until I was, I think, in 8th grade. And so we were like just close. Because my family fell on hard times, in the 80s and 90s, my grandmother was cleaning houses up until her 60s and 70s because my family, we just didn't have a lot of money and there was a lot of sacrifices. So just growing up with my grandma, being so close to her, and I remember she didn't have any formal education. She didn't know how to read, write English. And so, cleaning houses was her way of making money. And I remember when I was little, I would always teach her when I was learning, the ABCs, learning, a math. And I tried to teach her like some of those things. And so there were just certain moments with my grandma that I'll always cherish. She passed away almost 10 years ago, but we were just super close. And just seeing how hard she worked up until her 70s has really inspired me as a floral artist to just really strive to do better, to work really hard and just, keep on moving forward.
What made you open up your business?
Yeah, so 2020 was a really hard year for a lot of us. And it happened in May. And I just woke up one day and I told my husband, I was like, I want to be a florist, right? And I've always been drawn to flowers. So growing up, my mom and my aunt, they had a side hustle called Maria Del Creations. I actually forgot to bring my mom's little ornament that I had that I wanted to share and show. And it's in the other room. But so they had a side hustle. My aunt was the florist, and then my mom was like sort of like the lead designer. And so they would do back in like the 70s before I was born, they would design events for family and friends. My mom did ornaments. My aunt did the flowers. And so I'd always go with them to the
So
open
cool.
flower market. Yeah, and just go to they called them craft fairs back in the
Yeah.
day, but now, they're called pop-ups. So anyways, so fast forward to 2020, I was like, yeah, might as well, I'll do flowers with my aunt and my mom will do her her bunnies and her arrangements. So unfortunately, a few weeks after that, so I got my wholesale license, gone to the flower market, practiced, and then my mother, her cancer came back. So she was diagnosed in 2019 with an aggressive stage 1 cancer, and she was cleared early in 2020, but it came back. And so they gave her a few weeks to live. She ended up passing. I'll try not to cry. But yeah, so after about a month after her passing, I was with a family friend, and she was just like, Marissa, just go for it. Like, what do you have to lose? And so I started offering florals for family and friends. And I would post a little message on Facebook. I didn't even have an Instagram account. I was like, hey, I'm doing a floral run. And I never even shared my story. And a lot of people didn't know what had happened.
Yeah.
And so they would order arrangements. And, you know, every time I got 5 arrangements, I would celebrate that as a win. You know, it gave me a purpose to just put that one foot in front of the other. And people didn't know what I was going through. So for me, it was just like, it brought that joy into my life, into my heart that I just, you know, really was missing. So it was a way for me to channel my grief.
Yeah. Well, you and I have similar stories. And when I read about you, I was immediately drawn because we do have very similar stories, you know, in terms of, you know, our mothers being, you know, such role models and kind of pushed us towards this like flower life, and your mom passing and sort of honoring her with the florals that you do. Do you find that she gives you inspiration? Where do you draw your inspiration for your events?
She does. So in terms of like my work ethic and just, you know, so back it up a little, I actually do work full time. And so during the day, I'm actually balancing both jobs. So during the day, it's like my full-time job. And in the evenings, I, you know, do my florals. And so sometimes I feel like it's the same thing my mother did. She had her full-time job, and then her side hustle, she would stay up till like, I remember 1-2 hours, or 1 to 2 p.m. Or 1 a.m. in the morning. I was like, oh my God, how did she do it? And so, you know, the one thing that really inspires me is when I make an arrangement and when it's delivered to somebody, or even when I do an event and then they comment and they say, thank you, like you made my day, like really getting that sort of like reaction because of something that I did for them, or they loved my flowers, like that really just inspires me to do better and to continue what I'm doing. And it really, every time like I do a wedding and a bride's like, I'm super thankful, like I loved everything, like it really brings that joy into my heart. And I love designing flowers, but sometimes, you know, that joy, you know, Monday through Friday, like there's still that pain that I do have that people don't see. So flowers really brings that beauty, really brings that joy into my life. And I just, it touches me. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you find it therapeutic?
I do. It is my healing medium right now, to be honest. It really is.
It's interesting because at the Flower Mart, there's kind of 2 different reactions that I get from a lot of people. And usually it's like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. It's so therapeutic. I come here to kind of like relax and just, you know, be with the flowers. And then other people are like, this is way overwhelming. Like they're just so overwhelmed by so much beauty and so much, you know, product and all that. Do you find it's therapeutic or overwhelming? Or both?
Yeah, so I love to be super transparent. And the first time I went to the flower market, my first few runs doing my local deliveries, I'm like, how many flowers do I buy? Like there was just so much. How do I choose a color palette? And you know, at first it was a little bit overwhelming because I didn't know which wholesalers to go to or what. But then after like, you know, a few, you know, 5 or 6 runs, you know, you get used to it, and just seeing all the beautiful flowers that they have to offer. It's really that design process that's really therapeutic. But there are times where it can get a little like frustrating, where it's like, oh, I didn't envision it like that, or it just didn't work out. And so it's kind of a balance of both, really, but
Yeah.
more healing and therapeutic.
Yeah,
It's,
I agree.
yeah, I think it's my medium for this time in my life, that healing medium. I've always had some sort of healing medium growing up, and this is my florals. This is my calling right now.
Yeah. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you think if your company progresses and becomes, get more and more events, will you eventually move over to full-time floral?
I do get that question a lot. And that is, to be honest, a truly difficult question because my behavior says yes, because I am that florist that's up until 1 a.m. sending out the proposals, the mood
Yeah.
boards, design boards. But internally, I have to say, I'm not quite sure. And so, for example, for like next year, as I was writing my business plan and, really focusing like what is my intention for 2022, and I am taking on a limited number of events, and I'm doing that because I still do want to work my full-time job, and actually I really like my full-time job. I'm a product developer, project manager. I just need to balance it a little bit better. I did not do a good job in 2021, I'll be honest. I booked almost every single weekend, so I have to be a little bit more mindful of that.
That's what I'm hearing. A lot of like my customers in particular have, we had 2020, which was like a complete mess, and, everything was canceled and shut down. And then, the COVID brides were booking for 2021, and then event people were double booking because you just weren't sure, like, okay, is this going to happen? Is it not going to happen? And, we didn't have money coming in 2020. So then next thing you know, 3, 4 events later in one weekend, a lot of my customers are, like, I can't continue to do this. This is crazy. Have you found that multiple weddings really kind of run you down, and you're pivoting to something different in 2022?
Yeah, so 2021 was really my first year in business with doing events. And actually, my intention for this year was to like study, refine my craft. I did work with a mentor earlier this year, focus on like the basics, pricing, and my goal was to do one event. Really, that's all I wanted to do. And I did that in March. I was like, okay, let's just be realistic. What is your next goal? And so after doing a lot of intimate events and then weddings, it just got to be a little bit much. And I want to be very honest, because it was my first year in business. I did struggle a little bit with figuring out my minimum order dollar amount, right?
Yeah.
Setting those boundaries. And I think any new florist really can relate, because you really want to take on as many projects as you can to really discover yourself, find yourself in your floral art, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't know when you start, like maybe it's intimate events, maybe it's bigger weddings, maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe it's just, whatever that is. So after saying yes too many times, here I am at almost in November. I have a few weekends off and I'm just celebrating. And I'm
Yeah.
celebrating because I think I'm going to have a chance to really design for myself, pick out those crazy wild flowers that I want to use, or color palettes. And so I'm really excited for that. But I really need to be drawn a little bit more, be more intentional with my time for 2022. So yeah, I'm saying that, and I'm glad this is being recorded, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, right.
If,
Famous last words.
I mean, maybe a lot of people can relate, but I say that, but I'm really hoping I follow through with that in 2022. Limited number of events.
Yeah.
It's just hard. You get excited though.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly like a lot of, event florists. And, I've seen it where they're, I'm going to raise my dollar amount. How are you with the flower shortage and the flower price increase? How did that affect you and your business?
Yeah. So how that affected me, and how with some of the future events that I had coming up, obviously, like I can't increase the prices, on the
Yeah.
customers. And so it really takes a margin hit. But what I did find is, working with the wholesalers, letting them know really for me, as far in advance, hey, I've got this coming up, and just really having not, I would say kind of backups. So if you're not going to get this certain flowers from one wholesaler, make sure you just have a few backups for that. But I only had a few events this year, so I don't believe I was quite as impacted as some of the other florists who have
Yeah.
weddings every single weekend. But I did see some of the prices go down the last week slightly. So that
Yeah,
was,
thank God.
how about it in LA? Did you see that as well?
Well, I'm in San Diego,
Oh, in San
but
Diego.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, yeah, we've definitely this past week and the week coming up, our prices have gone down, thank God,
Yeah.
because, yeah, I mean, it's so hard with, the events that were booked from, 2020, you guys are not making money, and it's, the I feel a lot of floral designers are taking such a hit that they are reconsidering what they're doing for 2022. And I mean, I've heard, just through my circle and where I've been that some shops will be closing down, and that makes me so sad. Um, that, with the hardship of 2020 and then 2021 being like, you go from feast to famine or famine to feast, and you don't really know what 2022 has in store. What do you think 2022 has in store? Not that you're a psychic reader or anything, but
No, right? Let me grab my magic ball.
yeah,
Let's see. So, I mean, fingers crossed, and I don't think anything is going to, close back down. And I don't think we're going to, shift back a little bit. But I do feel that pricing, I think it might slightly go up. I feel that it might be a wave, just kind of how,
yeah,
it's been this year where there's going to be certain peaks, so then there's going to be certain lows. But that's a really tough question for me to answer.
yeah,
Because I really don't know.
yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
um Tell me a little bit about your heritage and how that has come into play with your design style. How would you describe your design style?
Yeah, so I would describe mine as more definitely non-traditional, a little bit more whimsical, playful. I
Yeah,
do like to have certain wild arrangements and certain designs. So the one thing with my design, I love making shapes. And
yeah,
so it's not the traditional, because at weddings you want a 360 design. You want
yeah,
something
for
that you
sure.
can view, and I get that, but I just love making shapes, that front and that back, and just really creating something wild with it. But yeah, I love colors. Like I love just the bright colors. Springtime, that is my favorite season. So anytime, I know most florists, they love fall. Like everyone's so excited,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's been great this season because, or for any time like I get a muted or like a fall palette, that is a challenge for me. And I actually love it. And I invite it because I'm not necessarily drawn to those colors. But,
Yeah,
this season using some of the Sahara, the toffee, roses, I was like, oh, okay, I love this.
yeah,
But I remember last year when I was making fall arrangements, I'm like, what do I do? Like these bright oranges I was using,
yeah,
it's quite interesting, the color palettes that I had last year, but it was fun this season. I had a few fall palettes, and I'm like, yes, the challenge. I can, design and figure this out, and, use roses that I would never normally, use
yeah.
in some of my daily arrangements.
Yeah, I mean, I looked through your portfolio on your website, and you definitely have a very beautiful style. And you're right on. You go towards like shapes. The front of the design is not necessarily what's in the back of the design, and that's what I love about you is that it's really different. It's not cookie cutter by no means. It's pretty, and the colors that you pick all blend so very well together. And I
Thank
do love
you.
that about you.
Hi, thank
Do you have any interesting projects coming up you want
I
to talk about?
do. I do. So I do have a floral workshop coming up. And so the community in Brentwood, which is about 30 minutes away, I just started hosting quarterly workshops
Oh,
and teach people really how to design your flowers, learn the basics so that they can go to the grocery store themselves and, make an arrangement. And with the holidays coming up, a great opportunity. And I have my last wedding of the season, which is the biggest wedding of the year in December coming up.
ooh. What's the vibe?
So it is a blue color palette. So blue and ivory, very elegant, romantic, and I'll be doing a hanging installation, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah,
So
well, we can't wait to see.
thank
It's going to be
you.
exciting to keep track of your Instagram so I can see when that happens. Um, but thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I just absolutely love you. And I think you're such a beautiful person and an amazing designer for just doing it such a short time. I
Thank you.
definitely think your mom, grandmom, has sort of guided you in the right direction. I think you have a amazing talent and it's natural. So
Yeah,
thank
thank
you so
you.
much. So
Thank
today I'm going to
you.
celebrate you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate your time this morning.